This video is sponsored by Dev Mountain. If you're interested in learning web development, iOS, or UX design, Dev Mountain is a 12-week design and development bootcamp intended to get you a full-time position in the industry. To learn more, visit devmountain.com or click the link in the description below. Hey, what's going on, guys? So about a week ago, I did a video on web scraping with Python and a library called Beautiful Soup, and a lot of you guys like that. You like the fact that I used Python, and I will be doing more Python tutorials, but I also got a bunch of comments asking about Node.js, and in particular, a library called Cheerio, which is used for web scraping using Node and JavaScript. Now this is the GitHub page here, and as you can see, it says it's a fast, flexible, and lean implementation of core jQuery designed specifically for the server. So we can pick things out of a website, out of the DOM, basically using jQuery, using CSS selectors. We can use .text, .html, methods like .find, .children, .parent, all that stuff to kind of traverse the DOM and pick and choose what we want and get that data. So what I want to do in this video is I want to scrape the sample blog just like we did in the Python video and loop through the post, get the title, the link, and the date, and put them all into a CSV file. Okay, and we'll be using the FS or the file system module that comes with Node.js for that. And we'll just kind of experiment a little bit and look at some of the methods and so on. I'm not going to spend too much time on it because it's basically just jQuery. And it's really late, and I'm actually going on vacation tomorrow for a couple days with my family. So you guys I'll probably be on vacation when you guys are watching this when I upload it. But let's go ahead and jump into VS Code. And I'm also going to open up my terminal. Let's actually close this. Let's minimize this. So I have a folder called web scraping, and it's completely empty, and I have my terminal open in the same folder. First thing I'm going to do is just create a package.json, so npm init-y, and let's clear this up. So that created a package.json file. Now we need to install two things. We're going to install Cheerio, and we also want to install something called request, which is a very lightweight HTTP module to make requests. All right, you could use Axios or Fetch or something like that, but I think that this is a good choice for this type of thing. All right, so now that those are installed, let's create our file. So I'm going to create a file called scrape.js, and we want to bring in our stuff. So let's bring in request, set that to require request, and then let's bring in Cheerio. Okay, so now that we brought in our dependencies, let's make a request. So this takes in a URL, and we're going to get that from, stupid microphone is in the way. We're going to get that from here. So let's copy that, paste that in, and then let me close this up, give us a little more room. This takes a second parameter of a function, so I'm going to use an arrow here. And this will give us three things. So a possible error, if there is one, a response, and also the HTML. And then we want to basically check to see if make sure there's no error. So if not error, and the response.status code is equal to 200. Which is a successful HTTP response. So if that's true, then let's go ahead and just console log the HTML and see what we get. All right, so I'm just going to go to my terminal. Let's minimize this, and let's run node and the file name of scrape, and we just get the entire page, all the HTML, which is what is expected. So this HTML, we want to run this through a load method from Cheerio. So let's get rid of the console log and say cheerio.load. And we want to put this in a variable. So I'm going to say const money sign equals. That way we can just use this just as if you were using jQuery to select things from the DOM. So from here, let's actually open up the site, and let's open up our Chrome tools. And I'm going to go click on this big heading here, and you can see that there's a div with the class of site-heading. It has an h1, and it has a span with the class of subheading. So let's head back into VS Code. Let's create a variable called site heading, and let's set that to money sign, and then we want the selector, which is a class of site-heading. All right, now let's see what happens if we console log this. So site heading, and we want our terminal. Let's go ahead and run it. And it just gives us this giant object, which has a whole bunch of stuff in it. You can see all these methods, all these arrays and objects and stuff. This is a very basic tutorial, so I just want to show you how to get the HTML and how to get the text inside. So if you want the HTML, we can simply tack on .html, and let's go ahead and run that, and it gives us the h1 and the span because that's what's inside of this this site heading. Okay, if we want the text, we can get that as well by saying .text, and that'll basically strip out the HTML. So if we run this, we'll just get sample blog and Traversy Media sample blog. Okay, and then we have methods like find. So let's actually create a variable. I'll call it output, and we'll set it to site heading dot find, and let's say we want to find the h1 that's in there, and then we want to get the text from it, and then we'll console.log the output, and let's run that, and we get sample blog. Okay, so we can do find, we can do like what else, children. So children would basically, in this case, would be the same thing. We're just going to look into site heading, which has an h1 in the children, so we can get that. We can get the text, and that should put out the same thing. We can also do next. So let's bring that down, and let's say site heading.children.h1, and then let's get .next. So next should be the span. So let's see what that gives us. And that gives us Traversy Media sample blog because that's the text that is in the span, which is next after the h1. Okay, we also have parent. So let's say we'll get the h1, and then we'll do .parent. And of course the parent is the actual site heading. So if we get the text of the site heading, we should get the text from the h1 and the span. And that's what we get. So I'm not going to go too deep into this. It's basically just jQuery stuff. So let's take a quick look at how to loop over things. So if we look at the navigation, which is, let's see, nav, and should be in here, ul. So each li right here in the nav, it has a class of nav item and has an a tag inside of it. So let's say we want to get the text from each of these. So what we could do is loop through it. So we'll say, let's get the class of nav-item, get the a tag, and let's do a .each. Again, if you know jQuery, this is very simple. Takes in an index, and then whatever you want to call this, I'm just going to use L. And then actually these should go in parentheses because this is a function and I'm using an arrow, so we want to go like that. Of course you could just do function and get rid of the arrow if you want to do that as well. So in here, let's create a variable called item and set it to, we want to do this syntax and put in L. Whatever you put in here should go in here, and let's say dot text, and then console log. So each item should then print out. Okay, if I did it right. So let's do it, and there we go. Home, about, sample, post, contact. So if we want the link, let's say we want each link inside the navigation. Let's take the element, the current element, our current iteration, and let's get adder. And we want the href attribute. And then we'll go down here and let's console log link. And there we go. So it outputs all the links. Okay, so pretty simple. Now what I'm going to do is create a new file so that we can get the posts and we can loop through them, get the stuff that we need, and put them into a CSV file. So I'm going to create a new file. We'll call this one scrape2.js. And let's see, in here I'm going to just copy scrape the initial file we just created, because we want to do all this stuff, make the request, bring in the dependencies. We just want to get rid of all this stuff inside of this. Actually, we want to keep this, the Cheerio.load, but get rid of everything else. Get rid of that. All right, so let's grab let's take a look at the DOM real quick, and let's see, for each post it has a class, each post has a class of post preview, so that's the selector that we're going to want to use to loop through. And then the title is inside an h2 with the class of post title. The link is inside an a tag in there. Inside post meta we have a span with the class of post date, so that makes it pretty easy. So yeah, so this should be simple. So we're going to grab the post preview. So class of post dash preview, and we want to loop through that with each. Pass in some parentheses. Let's put the index and L. Put an arrow here, and let's grab the title. So we're going to say const title equals L, and then I'm going to use the find method here because I want to find the dot post dash title. You could put h1 in there as well if you want, because there's only one h1, but I'm going to use the class, and we want the text. So let's save that. Let's close this sidebar up, and then let's just let's console log the title. Okay, so we'll run scrape2, node scrape2, and we get all the titles. Now notice there's a shitload of white space here. So in order to get rid of this, and we did this in the Python one as well, but this is a little different, we're going to do dot replace, and we want to put a regular expression in here. So we want slashes, and we want to put a \s and then a \s plus, which will get rid of all the white space, but it won't get rid of like the space in between here. And then we're just going to do G for global so that it gets everything, and we want to replace it with just nothing, an empty string. So let's try that out. So if we go and run that, there we go. So now we have all the titles without the white space. All right, so let's see. Next we want the link. So let's say const. And if you watch the Python one, notice how close this is to that, even though it's a completely different language, different library. It just shows that if you learn one language, it's easy to pick up others, because you do basically the same thing. It's just a bit of a different syntax, unless you're dealing with like really low-level languages where you're doing memory management, stuff like that. But for web development, it's pretty easy. So let's do L dot. I lost my train of thought. We're getting all the links, so let's do find link, and we want the actual href, so adder.adder href. All right, and then let's console log title and link and run that, and there we go. We get the title and the links. Last thing we want is the date. So let's say const date, and that's going to equal L. We're going to do dot find, and we want to find the class of post dash date, and we want to get the text. Okay, so if I were to log all three of these, let's take a look. Sorry about that loud ass motorcycle outside. So this is good. It's giving us the date, but notice the date has a comma inside of it. So that's going to kind of mess things up for us since this is a comma separated value file. So what we could do is tack on to this dot replace and use a regular expression and just put a literal comma. So we want to replace a comma with, let's do a space. So let's see what that gives us. Okay, so we'll just do January 4th. Actually, try that. Yeah, there we go. That's better. All right, so now we shouldn't have an issue with putting this inside of its own row. Okay, so now we're ready to basically write this to a file. So like I said, to do that, we're going to, what am I doing? We're going to use the file system or our FS module, which comes with Node, so we don't have to do like npm install fs or anything like that. We can just bring it in. So require fs, and we're going to create a variable called write stream. So basically we want to open up a stream to write, and we're going to set this to the FS module, and it has this create write stream. That's what we want to use here. And then we pass in the file name that we want to use, which is going to be post.csv. Okay, so we have that to work with. Now, just like in the Python video, we have to write the headers. Okay, so let's say write stream dot write, and for our headers I'm actually going to put in backticks here, and I'm going to say title, so we don't have to do any concatenation or anything like that. So let's say title, what else was it, the link and the date, and then we're just going to put a new line like that. All right, so that'll write the headers. Now down here we're gonna, let's just copy this. I'm going to replace this console log, and let's say write to CSV, or write row to CSV, and instead of this stuff here, we want to write the actual values. So this is since we use backticks, we can use this syntax where we just put variables inside of a money sign and curly braces. So title and link and date. All right, and then we'll just do new line like that, and we should be good. So after the loop right here, I'm just going to do a console.log, and let's say scraping done. Okay, I think that should do it. So let's open up our Explorer, and when we run this file, we should now get a post.csv file if everything is correct. So let's run it. Scraping done. Let's go over here, post CSV. Okay, it looks good from here in VS Code. Let's open it in what is it? Numbers. I always think Excel. So I'm going to open it up in Numbers on my Mac and take a look, make sure everything looks okay. So we have our headers, title, link, date. Our title, there's the link, and there's the date. And we replaced the comma with nothing. So we just took the comma out just so to avoid any mess ups with the CSV. All right, so I think that's it, guys. Now I know this is very basic, but it gives you a start on how to scrape websites. And like I said in the Python video, there's a lot of ethics that go into web scraping, because there's a lot of sites that don't want you to scrape their data. So you have to always look into it before you do any kind of scraping on a public site. And that's why I didn't use a public site. I just used my own little sample site. So, but whatever you want to do, it's on you. But that's it, guys. So hopefully you enjoyed this, and I will see you in the next